If you have found your way to this place recently or in the last few years, or if you've been here a long time but have bore through the ups and downs of its history, congratulations. Because your payday has about to arrive soon. And the glory and the possibility of this great congregation is about to come to fruition. In just a moment, I'm going to talk about that very naughty word, money and stewardship. But bear with me while I first tell you how wonderful you are. I will not be able to adequately describe how wonderful this place, this congregation is, but I will try. I will struggle to do so. And I have very specific reasons for saying what I'm saying. Because what I am doing here and what I have done here, I have done in 10 other places. So I've seen a lot of different situations. And I have served congregations in this capacity in Washington State, all over California, San Francisco down to San Diego, Canada, Texas, boy, could I tell some stories about Texas, Florida, Alabama, and of course, North Carolina. And one of the things that I notice is different levels of volunteer enthusiasm. Now, that may not mean much to you, but it means a lot to me. That is, to what degree are the people in a congregation willing or eager or even reluctantly willing to participate in keeping the congregation alive? Now, I have experienced two extremes. One is that, in my experience, people from the Midwest are fabulous volunteers, like North, South Dakota, Nebraska, Minnesota, etc. The people there seem to be genetically programmed to be of service to their community. Now, the other extreme is Los Angeles. Down in Los Angeles, people look at you when you ask for help and say, "What have you done for me lately?" before I respond to you. There's even a song to that effect. But it's a real thing. You know, it's like everybody's writing their own movie script, thinking they'll get it published at some point. But there's a mentality of, what are you going to do for me? Don't talk to me about what you want me to do for the congregation. And it's something you cannot teach. A minister cannot come to a place and convert the group. Well, this community has a commitment to be of service in abundance. I mean, real abundance. Now, let me try to explain more precisely what I mean. This congregation has, I number approximately 25 stellar volunteers. There are around 6 to 8 members of the congregation who do an incredible amount of work all the time. They are de facto workers in the congregation. High levels of service, week in and week out. They do not toot their own horns. They provide incredible stability and continuity. And they work exceptionally well with ministering staff, which I personally appreciate a lot. Additionally, there are about 15 more people who are more episodic in their volunteer work than the first group, but who show up especially during times of great need, like during the auction. So this group, which I estimated around 25 people, can be depended upon to engage in a massive amount of work. This is a huge source of stability and vitality to this congregation. They can be relied upon. Secondly, the second thing that makes you wonderful is you have a dedicated, committed, and long-time serving staff. This is a huge advantage, and it is relatively rare. That is, what you've got here is relatively rare, because tends to be a lot of turnover in quite a number of UU congregations, especially in specific positions. They have seen it all, the ups and downs, the cycles. They are respected professionals. They are an invaluable resource. That too makes you very strong. Third, you have a culture of caring here. I've mentioned this before, so I won't repeat myself, but you have many layers here where groups of people within the congregation care for others. That's one of the greatest strengths of this congregation, is caring for one another. Fourth, your location in the city of Winston-Salem is an advantage. Winston-Salem is neither too big nor too small. You have a major university here, Wake Forest. Now, I keep saying it's a major university because one of my daughters goes there, and I pay some of the bills, and I want to say it is a major university. The third thing is that you get the BBC in the morning and in the afternoon here. It's hard to get the BBC in Atlanta, but you get it in abundance every day. You have cultural activities. You have good hospitals. The city is a size whereby any minister can get to know every mover and shaker in the city easily. The interfaith scene is excellent here in the city. You're situated with mountains to the west and the ocean to the east. A temperate rainforest. There's only 2 of them in the country, and one of them is near Highlands. If you want to feel like you need to go to the West Coast and have that experience, you can drive a few hours to Asheville and experience West Coast light. So you are a good place for the cultivation of relationships and people. Fifth, you are located in the state of North Carolina, and that is an advantage. You have a moderate political climate. The political climate of Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, Alabama, Tennessee, Mississippi, West Virginia, and Kentucky are different from North Carolina. And you can tell by looking at who's the governor of the state in comparison to these other places. I have a friend who lives in Florida who keeps telling me that the governor there is working out of a program for fascism, step by step. You have, however, enough scary politics around you that it scares people enough where they'll run to a place like this. Sixth, the congregation is a diverse place in terms of where people are from. How many people here were born and raised in North Carolina? Could you raise your hand? How many people here were raised outside of North Carolina, born and raised? Bam. Do you see what I'm saying? You've got diversity. You've got real diversity here. North Carolina has the 4th highest rate nationally of people moving in from other states. There was a net gain of 112,000 people in 2020, 2021, and a gain of 361,000 moved in 2019. It's a trend. 7, the conditions for success have been set up. I won't say, because I'm too modest, who was helpful in that process. But it was the guy up here, and it wasn't Mitch, but he did a great job for me. But But you are situated now with a new governance system, the covenant, the stronger financial position you are in, etc. You are now in a situation where you don't have to worry about stuff that will get you nowhere. You can just worry about heading into the future. Hey, there you go. There you go. 8, you have had a great conclusion to your search process. And I have to curb my enthusiasm because we are in that delicate place of before. But believe me when I tell you, there will be jubilation in the hallways when everything comes to its conclusion. Now, these wonderful conditions exist here. It is a highly fortunate time for people to be here who are here. Now, something else is upon us now that we must consider carefully, and that is the stewardship drive. It is upon us, and it is happening soon. And it will be happening between now and when the new settled minister comes. So we have a deadline that we are dealing with. Now, in a moment, I'm going to ask you to begin to consider the process of making a financial commitment to this congregation. But I first want to be clear about something. Anyone who is struggling with money in any shape, form, or variety, I nor this congregation is asking you to give money you don't have to this congregation. This right here is a free zone, and anybody who wants to come here and participate at whatever level without giving money, because they cannot give money, is welcome here. This is now and will always be a free place, something that we are giving to the world and to the public, to anybody and everybody who wants to be a part of this place. So when I talk about giving, I'm not talking to people who do not have the resources to give. But if you have resources and if you have money to give, we would like a piece of that. Now, in the name of transparency, I want to try to lay before you exactly where we are financially. Could I cue up the first slide, please? I want to show you what we have. We have an endowment with $283,000. We have another fund that is reserved for any future building project which this congregation involves itself in. So if your next minister comes here and you decide you want to build a new sanctuary, you have that money, $220, to start out as seed money to raise the money. There's a building reserve fund of around $68,000 that's meant to deal with any building problems you have. And usually if you have a problem with your building or your structure, it costs some money. So this money can be used very fast. We have around $12,000 in a ground maintenance reserve fund. That's about to be wiped out because we've got to get rid of 3 trees. 4. We've got to get rid of 4 trees because they're dying. We've got to do it. We have raised in the past many capital campaign, and that is for projects that need to be done around this building. We already have that money created, and reserved $56,000. Could you go to the next page, please? We have a number of small accounts that are monies that are devoted to specific purposes. Like there's money that is devoted to helping children, or young people or children of this congregation go on trips, like if they wanted to go to the UUA in Boston. There's money that's set aside for specific purposes, like the Memorial Garden and things like that. But it's a large aggregate of accounts, but the total is that $48,000. We have a board discretionary fund of $48,000, and that is to be used in emergency or urgent needs that come up. Now, we own this property, 7 acres, and we own the building, obviously, but we owe still $260,000 on our building, for which we pay each month $3,321. If there's somebody here that wants to help us retire that building cost, go right ahead. All right, now let's go to the next slide. Now, to operate this facility and the staff and everything, it requires $1,373 a day to do. The operational reserves on hand right now for this congregation, that is the money that we have quick access to, is enough cash to allow us to function for 3 weeks. That amount fluctuates during a year. That fluctuates from anywhere from 1 month to 3 months. What that means is that if people in the congregation would cease to give and our cash flow into this congregation just ceased to happen, we would be able to function for about 3 weeks before we would begin to go into our resources that need to be guarded. Now, let me share something with you. All this money that I just talked about, the endowment and everything, we get some income from the endowment. But all of that money that I just talked about is reserved for purposes other than the operation of this congregation. But let me point out something else to you. That all that money that I just described to you represents gifts people in the past have made to this congregation over the last 50 or 60 years. Now, I want you to hold that in your thought for just a minute. People who have been members of this congregation for decades have given money to this congregation so that we in the present could prosper now and in the future. There was somebody or a couple of people who gave money to this congregation so that if one day you decided to build something, they were going to help you by giving you the first $220,000. There was somebody who cared enough about this congregation that they gave money that they had, perhaps when they passed, so that you could have an endowment that would generate income for you. So this money that I talked about is all about love. The love people from the past who were part of this congregation, most of whom or all of whom are now passed away, they gave to you to use and to help you in carrying further this vision that you hold now in your hand. The operating expenses, that amount of money, around $1,300 per day that I talked about, comes from you. The operating expenses are funded almost completely by pledges from our members, and so we depend upon you to fund this. Now, you might say to yourself, oh, Reverend Brock, wouldn't it be great if we didn't have to worry about this? Wouldn't it be great if we could just say, well, it's all paid for, somebody else is paid for, we don't have to worry about it. The poor interim minister doesn't have to get up in front of people and talk about money. Wouldn't it be great if it was just given to us? But paradoxically, that is not the case. Because there are congregations in the UU denomination that do have free money. And it has not been a good thing for them. There's one of our congregations has huge oil and gas revenues where they get tens of millions of dollars every year. And it's caused great difficulties in that congregation. There are other congregations that are part of the UU system that own property like parking lots in major cities, and they get huge revenue from that. But it has caused problems. And what we find again and again, and this is so paradoxical, is that if people in a congregation don't have to give to that congregation, it radically alters the relationship people have to a congregation. So that if someone gives of their resources that are precious to them, that congregation begins to mean something very important to them. Soon, you will get the opportunity to look at a board-approved budget. We are funding everything we have in the past. Everything is moving forward, carrying forward as it has been. But we are funding some new things. One is a new minister, which is of vital importance. And secondly, we are seeking a new part-time technical staff person. These folks over here to my right, they need some relief, people. And we're trying to get a paid staff person to help them out. Please bear in mind something. I am not talking to people who don't have the resources to give. But if you have resources to share, we want a piece of it. And I say so unapologetically and proudly because this place is worth it. If you think about it carefully, a congregation like this is kind of a miracle. I think back to 2016, and I had just moved back from the West Coast. And I went to that fall, 2016, to a ministers' meeting in Highlands, North Carolina. Oh, by the way, the best Unitarian Universalist camp in the whole nation is in Highlands, North Carolina. And so I went to, it really is, because I've been to most of them. It literally is. So it also has the second only temperate rainforest is in Highlands, North Carolina. Anyway, so I was at this ministers' meeting, and everybody, every UU minister from every major city in the Southeast was there. This was pre-COVID, obviously. And this was right after you-know-who got elected as president. So everybody was in a state of shock, right? And I had been living on the West Coast for more than 15 years, and I was coming back to the South to be near my family. And the culture here in the Southeast is different than from other parts of the country. And I was sitting there and listening to people, and I got caught up in this immense emotional feeling because I began to realize that all of these people who were there were bearers of light in all across the Southeast, that they were helping to hold together communities like this, communities that stand for reason, that affirm science, that cherish the human spirit and human potential, and stand for something very special. I ask you this, how many churches do you know that have a Black Lives Matter banner on the front? How many congregations do you know that honor individual liberty, democracy, freedom of thought and opinion, a community of faith, not of dogma, a place where children and youth can be brought to learn those values and to not be afraid? And the list goes on. So here we are, stewards of a precious gift, this community, in our time to be stewards, inheritors of what has gone before, asked to carry the light forward. It is important what we do. What we have is worth giving and sacrificing for. I am asking you, each of you, to get involved, to take that next step, and to be attentive as you receive information about this campaign. I'd like Ann to stand, please. And she is the leader of our stewardship drive. She will be outside this area to answer your questions. It is most important, if you would, to consider going to one of our house parties. We will feed you if you come to our house parties. And we'll have a good time and talk about this most important issue. It is all in our hands. There's no mother church or institution that can sweep in and save us. We must stand up for ourselves. It's all in your hands. It's in your capacity to decide.